the legal analysis now as we welcome in Brian Claypool. There he is, our legal eagle of the hour. And, you know, I want to, by the way, he's talking, Joe was talking about Jim Jordan on whether, commenting on Hunter Biden defying the subpoena, which I think maybe we should point out that Jim Jordan, if I remember correctly, should know about defying subpoenas because he did when the January 6th committee had subpoenaed him. Now, in the case of Hunter Biden, what about that legal jeopardy that he may have created for himself, whether the Department of Justice goes after him, Brian, for not testifying behind closed doors today? How might that play out, do you think?
Hey, Connell, great to see you again. Yeah, the reality of this is the DOJ is going to get this, and they're likely to sit on this. They're not likely to do anything with this, Connell, because there's more important matters in the country to deal with. And then the only other option then, let's assume the DOJ doesn't do anything, right? Mm-hmm. And the only other option that the House Oversight Committee has is they would have to file a federal lawsuit in federal court, Connell, and then work toward a federal judge issuing an order to force Hunter Biden to testify. The problem with that is it would take months and months, Connell, and it would be a major delay, and you wouldn't likely see Hunter Biden testify till maybe even after the election.
Okay. And then the other issue here, I say other issue because they're separate in many ways, is trying to connect the issues of Hunter Biden to his father in an impeachment inquiry that's going to get started. And then where that leads, nobody knows at this point. But I want to play a little bit of what Hunter had to say earlier and then ask you the legal questions essentially about what we know is a political proceeding, because we've been through some impeachments here in recent years. We know all about impeachment after the two in the previous administration. But here's what Hunter said about, you know, they're going after his dad. And then I want to talk about any connection that you've seen in the evidence so far. Here he is earlier today.
My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad, and certainly not as an artist.
All right. So from where you sit, Brian, I've been following this, and I'm sure you've seen everything that's come out on this. Evidence that connects the current president, Joe Biden, to anything resembling high crimes and misdemeanors. What would you say at this point?
Right. Great question, Connell. As of now, the optics don't look good. The needle's pointing more toward further investigation. For example, I think what the House Oversight Committee should do, Connell, is depose a guy named Eric Sherwin. He was Hunter Biden's partner in this Rose Seneca Partners company. And Sherwin's the guy that met with the former chief of staff, Steve Ricchetti, for former President Biden. And I think those two individuals, Connell, should be deposed. Mm-hmm. And then you need to develop evidence from that and then subpoena records, for example, from Rose Seneca, right? Because I think they're a mergers and acquisition investment firm. Okay. So, for example, did they acquire a company that they had all these meetings taking place in the White House? Is there some connection to the meetings in the White House to a company that's been acquired? You've got to start subpoenaing these two guys, subpoena all the records of Rose Seneca. You've got to unpack all these deals that were done by Rose Seneca to see whether favors were given by the White House to any of these companies.
That's when the Democrats hear that. That's when they use the term fishing expedition, because they say, and I want to ask you about the line legally between that, because, you know, I think what you're saying is, you know, to have an investigation and inquiry, you have to fish for evidence. And they're saying basically you should have some sort of evidence before, in the case of impeachment, because it's so serious, you bring it up. For example, second Trump impeachment, there was plenty of evidence. The charge was inciting an insurrection, and the comments that the president made were in public. Everybody had, that was the evidence that was decided upon. Eventually, he was acquitted in the Senate, but that's why he was impeached the second time around. So that we had that evidence going in. You're saying we should look for the evidence now. How do you think it should work?
Right. I just agree with that. The comment you mentioned. If you're going to do an impeachment proceeding of a sitting president, you need to have evidence, like you said, treason, bribery, or other high crimes, right? Well, how do you get the evidence? You have to do an investigation to get the evidence. And I think that's what the House Oversight Committee should continue to do. You need to take depositions of these folks. For example, there was money paid to Hunter Biden by Ukraine, China, Romania, to offshore accounts.
So you're saying there's enough there now to look at, because you're obviously not going to just say, you could look at any president and say, oh, we're going to look for evidence on XYZ, but you're saying there's enough there to look, is your point, to get started.
Exactly. Great point. Maybe I'm not getting it artfully. There's probable cause to do a deeper dive to see if there is evidence, and because you don't want to launch an impeachment based on politics. You need to launch it based on evidence. I think it's responsible to dig deeper. I mean, why not get the bank records from all these offshore companies that paid Hunter Biden and then trace the money that went from the offshore company to Hunter? Did that touch a President Biden account? You need something like that to move forward with an impeachment. But how do you know that?
I think they have a lot of those records already in the committee, but yeah, I know what you're saying. So you're saying that would be enough here, because again, going back to this issue, I want to leave it in a second, of probable cause, whether that is probable cause, because I think, but you're saying they have that. That's your argument. They have probable cause now.
Oh, I think that, yes. I think there's probable cause to do a deeper investigation. Connell, there were over 20 meetings between this guy, Sherwin, and former President Biden's chief of staff.
Right.
Why is he in the White House 20 times? Why can't we find out that? I think it's really important to look at that information. Look, at the end of the day, though, I don't think an impeachment is the best move for our country. I think we need to focus on border crime, and I think this is going to backfire for Republicans if we go through another impeachment proceeding. I personally think the best route to go is let's develop this evidence. Let's furnish that in a transparent proceeding to voters across the country. Let us all then make a decision as to whether this evidence impacts whether President Biden is fit to be the president. That's my view.
All right. We'll see how it goes, because Hunter Biden would sort of agree with that in some ways, that he wanted to testify in public and not behind closed doors. Brian, thanks as always. Brian Claypool on the legal side of things, such as it stands. But again, it's a political proceeding, as Brian points out at the end of the day, no matter what. In a moment.